Last week we talked about Top Gun Maverick, which at the time of the recording was the highest grossing film of 2022. Now it's time to talk about the new highest grossing film of 2022, Avatar: The Way of Water. Hi, my name's Drew and welcome to another review video on Flying Wiener. It's quite funny that obviously it was predictable, but still, I thought it was still nice to give Top Gun Maverick its due at the time, as it still was the highest grossing film of last year. So I finally went to see Avatar: The Way of Water. I didn't actually plan on seeing it in cinemas because, like many people I believe, the first Avatar is something I saw in the cinemas and then did not watch ever since then. Just didn't have any interest. The story itself didn't do much for me. I, like many others, would admit that technically it is really an achievement, especially for the year 2009. At the same time, I kind of hate the film because it gave us all this bland 3D-ness that was slowly dying out over the past few years. And I'm kind of wary that I might be returning now because this Avatar film, of course, is also really heavily pushing 3D. And, we might be getting back into another renaissance with the 3D. And I really dislike it because with most films, you wear the glasses, you might notice it for the first 2 or 3 minutes, and then, you just completely forget about it. There are not many films that really use the 3D that well. The best example to this day for me is Dread, which is one of my favourite films of all time. But it really made good use of the 3D and colours and all sorts of stuff, so I really like that. I will say, however, that this Avatar: The Way of Water does use the 3D rather well. There are some scenes that really help having the 3D for, but overall, it's still something that I forgot for the majority of its 3 hour and 10 minute runtime. Anyway, enough about that. I actually rewatched the first Avatar in preparation for this on the same day I went to the cinema even, so I had 6 hours of Avatar basically. And what I mentioned just a minute ago, I absolutely stand by. When you look at it technically, 2009's Avatar is incredible. To think that was 13 years ago, and even a few years later when you look at the first Avengers film and loads of other films that came out later, technically didn't look as good, so the computer graphics, etc., really an achievement, it must be said. Sticking with the first one, still the story, I feel, really I do not care about it. You have Sam Worthington as Jake Sully, and his character is incredibly unlikable. It's just, he's generic, GI soldier basically for most of the film, really, and yeah, he has very, very few redeeming qualities. Actually, a very strange choice for the main focus of the story, the main character. But there you go. Again, technically amazing. The world that was built, fascinating to see. Really a technical achievement. Story, didn't really care about it. Anyway, let's talk about Avatar: The Way of Water. I'll start as I usually do with the plot first. And I must say that while just to preface the whole thing with this opinion, I feel that Avatar: The Way of Water is an improvement over the original in pretty much every way. This film, I really do feel is an improvement. I would say it's actually a good film, where I'd say the first one, watch it for the technical stuff. Other than that, don't care much. This one I would actually say is a good film. But the story isn't exactly one of the things, or I really need to say, to me, this is a film that is less story and it's more impressions, and emotions that are being transmitted, that are being portrayed. It's like, for me, it's like going through a particularly interesting section in a zoo, or maybe some botanical garden, etc., where you're constantly discovering something new and you're just in awe of the beauty or something like that. That is what Avatar: The Way of Water felt like to me, because again, you're watching the screen and you must say that the world they have crafted here is absolutely beautiful, and obviously the way it's shot and everything. It is really just fascinating, and you'd want to go on a trip just to see this planet and all its surroundings, really beautiful environments. So to me, it's more about that and emotions between the character than it is about the actual story. Nonetheless, I will tell you about the story, so in case you only vaguely remember the first Avatar, It ended with Jake Sully, played by Sam Worthington. He has his consciousness transferred into the Na'vi, who are the blue people that you see on all the posters, etc. That's what they're called, the Na'vi. In the first part he played an avatar, which is a sort of clone made out of Na'vi and human DNA. And at the end of the first film, his consciousness is transferred into this clone body, and he actually lives with the Na'vi people, and especially Zoe Saldana's character Neytiri. So yes, that's how the first one ends. So we have the second one, and there's a time jump, and we see that they now have 5 children. Sort of, 5 children. I'll put it this way, 3 biological children. One of them is like an immaculate conception, I suppose you could say. Sigourney Weaver's character, her Na'vi clone of the first part, has this baby, which was, I suppose, given to her by Awa, which is their godlike entity that they pray to, and that did the magical consciousness transfer, and that somehow impregnated the clone, and that child came from that, and they adopted it. Very strange, very weird. I mean, I kind of get what they're going for with this, and you can kind of see where they want to take the story, but it's just still very weird, especially because this 14-year-old girl is actually played and voiced by Sigourney Weaver. Obviously they altered the voice, to make it sound more like a 14-year-old, but it's very strange. And the 5th child is actually a human who is living among the Na'vi. Anyway, still, they've got 5 children, and they realise that humanity is very, very petty, and they have actually, just to remind you, the background story for the humans in Avatar is that the world, Earth, is really, going to shit, and they need to find a place to stay in the universe. And instead of focusing on this really, really incredibly important mission, they, on Earth, clone a bunch of these Na'vis, so they make their own Na'vi clones. They implant the memories from Colonel Quaritch. He's from the first Avatar film, played by Stephen Lang. Him and his, soldiers, they take the memories, they implant them in these Na'vi clones, send them all the way to this planet, Pandora, just to take out Jake Sully. That is basically their mission. They're going, so it's basically a revenge plot. They're like, oh, you've wronged us, so we're going to make this special force task team, send them off to this planet just to kill him. He is one leader out of many tribes of Na'vi. The whole thing makes no sense. That's what you're going to use your resources for while humanity is literally, facing extinction. Very weird, very weak justification, if you ask me. That is one of the very, very weak points of the story for me. Anyway, that's what happens. And Jake and Neytiri, they make the decision that they don't want to put their tribe in danger, so they're going to flee, basically, and they seek refuge with a clan of water Na'vi. They live, by the water, and they live very, very differently, not like we have seen until now, in the forests, up in the trees, but by the water, in the water, and that has actually affected their evolution, which is one of the cool elements. As you can imagine, very predictably, obviously, this task force, they track them to the air, and so instead of putting their original tribe in danger, they're putting their new tribe in danger. That is the basic plot of this thing. That's all that happens really in 3 hours and 10 minutes. It's all very predictable. You can, well, apart from maybe a few small things, but you can see where it's going, and yeah, I don't spoil films, but that is really all there is here. So this isn't a spoiler, this is just, yeah. That is just what happens in the story, which isn't much. Like I said, to me that's one of the weak points. But I really like the characters, I will say that. I like all the interactions, in the family, but also with the new tribe, and at least characteristically, Colonel Quaritch as the nemesis, as the villain, is still very good. Like I say, while the justification for his character is ridiculous, I like him, as the villain. He does that really well. So, and he's got the personal story, of course, with him and Jake Sully, from the previous films. So that feeds really well into the story. One of the things that I really didn't see necessary is, obviously it's got a long runtime, which is fine if you're showing off a really huge, beautiful world, etc. But it's definitely too long. I feel you could easily shave off quite some time here, because you've got these 5 kids, and you know, they all get into their own situations, they're all given enough backstory and scenes and everything, you know, to flesh them out, etc. I felt it was really unnecessary. You really did not need so many of these kids, you know. And one thing that I feel is quite a shame is that Zoe Saldana's character, Neytiri, I feel she's kind of put in the background here in this film, which is very unfortunate, because you know, she was obviously an integral part of the first film, and here it seems like she's become more of a supporting character, which I felt was really silly and unnecessary. So instead of focusing so heavily on the kids, I felt that it could have been more about, you know, her and Jake figuring out how are they going to be with this clan, and just her being more involved. It felt almost stereotypical, you know, decades back, you're the woman, you know, you have got nothing to say, and and in certain scenes all she's there for is just to be hysterical, basically. So that, I really didn't like the characterization of her in this film, so I hope they improve that in the next one again. But yes, so these children didn't need so many of them, and then you've also got children of the new tribe, you know, and they also get a lot of screen time. So I feel like, you know, that could have been reduced a bit in size. Otherwise, quite fine, but obviously you're there to watch the technical stuff, and yeah, I mean, the camera work is amazing. I mean, and James Cameron is a great action director, so while there's a lot going on, and we've got water and air creatures, you know, flying about, swimming around, etc., which could become very disorientating very, very quickly, especially in action scenes. That is not the case here. The camera work is phenomenal. The world looks amazing, you know, the colours and everything. Like I say, the 3D actually even worked more than it usually does for films, at least for me. So that is a bonus. But speaking of the 3D, they have a constant shift between 24 and 48 frames per second. Typically actiony stuff will be like 48 frames per second, and just character dialogue, etc., slower scenes will be in 24 FPS. Now I read they did this because it allows them to work more easily with superior 3D technology by upping the frames for the action shots, because then they don't have to mess about with the lighting so much. That seems to be the, you know, in a nutshell, summary of what's going on. For me, someone who works with frames, you know, because I make videos, etc., so it's an issue that I am at least knowledgeable about, it was a bit distracting, because you have these changes sometimes in the very same scene, you know, it's swapping between the two different frame rates, and to me it was a bit irritating, so it actually took me out of the film quite a bit. Which is a shame, because you don't want your audience to be distracted by just a technical thing, you know. So that is a shame. If you don't notice it, I'm very, very happy for you. I am jealous. I would like to experience the film that way, but it didn't happen for me. Otherwise, like I say, technically phenomenal. You know, the CGI, I was looking particularly at just the flow of motion when you've got people jumping into water and just how they move, etc. Absolutely flawless in my opinion. So they really nailed it down completely. It's very easy visually to get lost in this world because of that. So it really is quite breathtaking to watch. I'm glad I watched it in an IMAX cinema as well. So yeah, just really phenomenal to experience the whole thing. That is how I would summarize it as well. So technically amazing. You know, I like the character moments that you have. I like the emotions, you know, the impressions you get of the world. There's just not much story here, and some of the characters either I feel could be cut, or the motivations they've got are a bit questionable. Anyway, if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. It is the best way to support this channel. Leave a comment down below about any of the two avatars, or about your opinions, comparisons, you know, what did you feel, what you think was going to happen with the next ones. Any of that down in the comments below. I'll thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video for Flying Wiener. Take care. Bye.